So this is a really interesting Reddit post right here on debt free. How did you cope with stress related to debt? I've noticed a lot of posts here from people who are stressed about their debt. It's no surprise. Studies show debt can seriously impact our well being. According to Forbes, 54% of people in debt are experiencing stress. And then you see these high percentages of people experiencing sleep problems, anxiety, diminished social lives, depression. And the reason I think a lot of people are stressed out is because dealing with debt can be really overwhelming because there's no clarity in one's financial picture. So I'm just going to do the exact opposite of what most people do when it comes to their debt, show how easy it is and how you can easily organize your debt and pay it off. Right. And so we're going to use something called the velocity method to do this. And believe it or not, it had a cooler name that we used to use called velocity banking, but the state of Illinois actually went after another YouTuber for using the name Velocity Banking and fined him $20,000. Right? So they said, "Hey, the general public could be confused because you are not a bank." That's like saying, you can't. If you're a consultant and you have a company called Restaurant Consulting Group, you're not allowed to use that because you're not a restaurant. That's how insane that is. But you know what? They're the guys in charge. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get started with debt payoff using this velocity method. So what's the very first step? It's to create a budget. Okay, you have your income, expenses, leftover checking and savings. And remember, your budget is your debt attack plan. Okay. And so we make good money, $7,000, and we only have $38.09 left over. Okay. And so we have an expense breakdown here. And what's important is that we list every single debt that we have, right? So 5 credit cards, an auto loan, a student loan, a mortgage, and then on top of that, we list our personal expenses that we pay for that's not tied to debt. So imagine if we were debt free, what would we still have to pay for? And it would be this, this would go into this line right here. And so what we're going to do is show, hey, with the same income and the same expenses, that's not necessarily a problem, right? And we're also going to change the flow of money. So the way that the average American does banking, okay, is they want to have something in the checking account left over. So in other words, the checking account is the final destination of our money, and we're not going to do that anymore, right? So instead of making the checking account the final destination of our money, it's going to be something called a line of credit. Now, I know if you're new to this, you're looking at the left side and right side thinking these two look exactly the same. And they do, okay, if you're new to this, but they're philosophically very different, okay? So on the left side, all right, your checking account is that final destination of your money. Whereas on the right side, it's a line of credit. And as soon as we get paid into our checking account, we just take it right out and put it to a line of credit, right? So final destination of our money is the checking account here. And the final destination of our money is a line of credit. And the checking account is just treated as a temporary stop. Very big distinction that we're going to make. And if you've never heard of a line of credit, it's really, really cool. It's a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and use it over and over again. And a credit card is a form of a line of credit, but we're going to be focused on using either a personal or home equity line of credit. And you might be asking why. Well, it is the only financial tool that the bank has where if you put that entire paycheck into that line of credit, you can easily take it out, right? Whereas even with credit cards, I mean, let's imagine that I have $7,000 and I put it into one credit card, right? Can I use this credit card to pay the other credit cards and the other loans? No, that's not. You see, the credit card has, yes, a lot of flexibility, but not the ultimate flexibility that we need, which is why we use a line of credit. And another reason why I use a line of credit is because it has lower interest rates than credit cards, right? Even though it has higher interest rates than most loans, that's not really a big worry for us. Okay. And then you can see as we move debt into the line of credit, especially credit cards, that's the one we're going to usually start off with, we can easily increase our cash flow, right? And so if you've never gotten a line of credit, it's kind of the same process as getting a credit card, right? Although it's not as heavily advertised. And so how do you get any sort of credit? Loans, lines of credit, credit cards, I'll tell you the secret. Okay, the banks will never advertise this, but I will tell you the secret. Banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay, that's like the ultimate secret. You know how I got over $700,000 in lines of credit? I always went to a bank when I didn't need money. Okay, I always didn't go to a bank when I didn't. Wait, is that grammatically correct? I'm getting myself confused with all the double negatives. But I always went to a bank. Yeah, I always went to a bank when I did not need money. And then the bank sees that and say, okay, I'll lend you a line of credit or I'll lend you a credit card or whatever, because banks don't lend money to people who need it. And you might be wondering, well, why is that? It's because people who need money don't pay you back. Yeah, I know it's kind of like one of those really harsh truths that they'll never say out loud, but that's why the bank doesn't lend money to people who need it. Now, you might be asking, like, hey, while we're doing this demonstration, you're just getting a $50,000 8% line of credit, even though you have $38 left over. What's up with that? And I'm telling you, if you're new to this, it'll actually be easier to understand it this way for educational purposes. And so if you ever take a look at like real people I've been working with, it's pretty crazy because I've had people have 22 debts and $4 left over and a maxed out line of credit. So that person had a line of credit because they got it way before they needed it, and then they treated it like another maxed out credit card. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to move some debt into the line of credit. Okay. And then we're going to use a formula called the cash flow index. If you don't know what the cash flow index is, it's basically a very simple formula of the balance of the debt divided by the monthly payment. Balance of the debt divided by a monthly payment. And then you do that for every single debt, every single one of them. That's all you do, right? And then you sort them from smallest to largest, right? And you pay off the small ones first, okay? And why do we pay off the large one last? Well, it's all about bang for your buck. So take a look at this 30-year mortgage. I literally have to give someone $300,000 for $1,200 of cash flow. That's not a lot, because I could just simply pay this 30 grand credit card and this 8 grand credit card, combine them and get the same amount of cash flow as my mortgage. I mean, which one would you rather have? 300,000, pay 300,000 for 1,200, or 38,000 for 1,200, right? There's a reason why we don't pay off the mortgage first. We pay it off last, because what we want to do is get the most amount of cash flow in the shortest amount of time and then apply it to our other loans or debts, right? And so let's go ahead and look at this cash flow index right here. Anything below 50 is fair game. And let's go ahead and do that. So it's 5, 8, 15, 27, 30. Let's see, 27, 30. And how much credit card is that? Debt is that? That's 85,000. So for this example, we'll say we have a $90,000 credit limit. Now, again, banks don't lend money to people who need it. So what happens in real life is that people have a maxed out line of credit, or they have a really small line of credit. Because I like to do dramatic demonstrations, I just want to show you this, right? If you had a big line of credit. So imagine we move, okay, $85,000 of this credit card debt into here, okay? Now, again, okay, we didn't get rid of the debt. We didn't get rid of the debt. All we did is transfer the debt, okay? So you might be thinking, well, doesn't this stay the same? No, because these payments just go away, right? Because we didn't get rid of it. We just transferred the debt. So this $38 turns into $2,865.59, even though it's the same income. See how shocking that is, right? Like, you see why the average person is stressed out is because they're running on an inefficient engine of trying to save money and making their checking account as their main operating account, where in our method, we're never saving money at all. Like, if we save money at the end of the month, if we have debt, then we're kind of ashamed, right? So there's a lot of psychological conditioning going on that makes you feel proud of being inefficient in your life, okay? And so this $38 turns into $2865.59, okay? Without doing anything, all right? And so what we're gonna do is, now this is the final step of the method, which is that we put our entire paycheck, this entire $7,000 here, we take it out when we have to pay, these other debts and the $2,000 of personal expenses. Now, if you know what I do, I don't take out the money from the line of credit to pay the personal expenses. I use a credit card, and because a credit card doesn't charge any interest for 1 month as long as you pay the statement balance, then when the statement balance is due, then I take it out of line of credit. I call it the credit card line of credit combo. It's a really long name, but I don't. But at the right time, we're gonna pay for expenses for and loans or debts from the line of credit, right? So that's what this $4,000 is. And then after every single month, the balance will go down about $2,865.59. Okay, every single month. And so I'm going to show you how that works. So what you do is take the previous month's balance interest and subtract our cash flow. And then you'll see that the balance goes down about $2,800. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance. Let's go ahead and do that. Multiply it by the interest rate and then divide by 12. And then you see that, yes, even though we have to pay $557 of interest, kind of seems like a lot, right? Notice how the balance is going down and the interest is slowly going down, right? Look at that, okay? So the thing that stressed us out because we only had $38 left over is not a problem anymore, or at least assuming all things constant, right? So we're just taking a look at this and it's like, yeah, I can do this. I'm not stressed. Maybe I was doing it the wrong way. And if you were, that's not an issue, just as long as you learn how to do it right, right? So here's the other thing too. A lot of times, when people see debt like this, it's like, how do I make the minimum payment, right? Because sometimes, if let's say you did get a line of credit and you had $38 left over, okay, it might freak you out to have another extra $500 payment. Now I'm not now we did transfer the debt, so it's not like we had the same debt and an extra 85,000. We transferred, so that's why the demonstration is pretty easy. But what I'm saying is this: if you have $7,000 a month and the minimum payment is around like $557 or maybe a little bit more, you're easily going to make the minimum payment, right? Put the $7,000 in to that line of credit, minimum payment, problem solved, right? And so you never have to worry about making the minimum payment on a line of credit again. Okay. So now we just kind of copy and paste these formulas and then just wait until it goes to zero, which it does. And you see that in month 34, okay, month 34 right here, it's over. It's over. So 34 months and all that credit card debt that we were worried about is gone in less than 3 years. Okay. And then now we have the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage, right? So now it's going to be, so how do we know what the current balances of these are? Well, luckily we got a loan calculator right here, and all we got to do is put 34 months. Okay, 34 months. Let's go ahead and do that. And so now we just follow the same principle of the cash flow index. Okay. Now I'll tell you what most people think is they're looking at the interest rate, right? So they look at these 3 loans and they say, oh my goodness, this has the highest interest rate. Let me focus on this. And I'll tell you why we're not focusing on that. It's because we just want the most amount of cash flow in the shortest amount of time. And then we could apply it to the next loan, right? Because if you take a look at the cash flow index here, what does a small number mean? It means I get a lot of bang for my buck for paying off that debt. Okay. So 10 grand for $400 of cash flow or 30 grand for 460. Which one would you take? I'll take the 10 grand for 400, Alex. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this right here. And then this is going to be plus 10074.61. And then what happens here is that the auto loan now goes to 0 because we transferred the auto loan debt into the line of credit, right? So every time you do a transfer, you increase your cash flow. Now it has to make sense to do that. And the only time it really doesn't make sense is the 30-year mortgage. Okay. But you see here that in month 37, we pretty much paid it off, right? So 37 months, so it's going to be 85 plus 22, and that's going to be 107K. All right, and then now we have the student loan and the mortgage. So at month 37, right, what's the balance of the student loan? It's 30 grand, okay? And so now we can move this payoff to 7% loan, right? Student loans, especially at the graduate level, have higher interest rates because I think the idea is that because it's for your professional schooling and you'll make a lot of money, they can charge you the higher interest rates. That's what I assume. But yeah, 7% interest rate. We'll still follow the cash flow index model as our first indicator of which debts to pay off first. But something that we have to be careful about is as this number grows bigger, we want to be careful about moving an entire loan into a line of credit, especially when it comes to the 30-year mortgage, right? So if the interest rate is the same or higher, like if the loan interest rate is the same or higher than the line of credit, it's safe to move that loan into a line of credit, right? But if it's low, if you have a low interest rate and you have a very high cash flow index, which usually means you have a very long term, um, then it's not safe to move that loan into a line of credit, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate this. So this is 7%, 8%, very similar, at least in my eyes. Let's go ahead and move this right here. I'm going to move that entire student loan, 30487.2, into the line of credit. And so now what does this mean? It means that the student loan right here, this 464, now goes to 0, okay? And so now this cash flow is $3,700. And remember, we started at $38. No, we didn't. Oh man, I'm telling you, if you're ever in this situation, you're gonna panic, right? Like, I know that finances, if you really want to deconstruct it, it's just the numbers on a computer screen, but those numbers on a computer screen determine whether you eat or don't, or have a place to live, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and do this, and we're gonna do Control V, copy and paste, and then this is now our updated cash flow of 3735.19. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this, and this is now 45. So 45 months we paid off that student loan. Okay, and I'm going to do this. So 45 months, this would be 107 plus 40, and then it'd be 147K. Okay, and now we got to find out in 45 months, because that's where we're at right now, what's the balance of the mortgage, right? So now we just type in 45 right here, and then the balance of the mortgage is 275, right? So at this time, this 30-year mortgage is our final loan, okay? Now we have two options of paying it. We can do the default, which is extra payments, right? So if you don't know what extra payments is that you simply just pay the monthly payment, and then whatever's left over, you make that as an extra payment or an overpayment to the loan. And that's definitely doable, right? If you can do that, more power to you. I have a hard time doing that. And the reason why I have a hard time doing it is the same reason I have a hard time overpaying a credit card, right? So remember in the very beginning, I said like, hey, if I put this entire paycheck into one credit card, I can't use this credit card to pay for other things. Now, given that this is our very last loan, that's not going to be that big of a deal, but we still want to just kind of keep the general principle of not segregating our income, meaning that our income just really goes to one place. And when we do that with the loan, we have that same issue because a loan is a one-way street. So most people never overpay credit cards and loans because whenever you overpay them, especially when you have a mix of debts, it's really hard to get that money out. Whereas with the line of credit, that's not the case. That's why we can still even use a line of credit to pay off the 30-year mortgage even at a 3%. So this is the part where a lot of people will say, oh my goodness, like I can't believe you're encouraging people to use an 8% line of credit for 3% loan. I'm not encouraging people to use an 8% line of credit at all. What I'm saying is that you have to pay the debt off at the right order. You're not going to segregate your income. You're going to use a line of credit because it's a tool that helps you essentially make sure that this checking and savings always goes to 0, right? So we have to kind of think about this holistically rather than, oh my goodness, line of credit interest rate is 8, loan interest rate is 3, so therefore we should always use loans or something like that, right? The reason why the loan has a lower interest rate is because the interest rate determines two things, or it's determined by two things. Number one is your risk profile as a borrower, right? If you're a risky borrower, they have to charge you a higher interest rate to compensate for that risk, meaning you haven't made payments or you defaulted on loans, so therefore you are a big risk. Number two, how much access you have to that money. Because the loan is a one-way street, the banks know that you're never going to make more than the monthly payment, right? They know this because psychologically, everybody knows, just like when you overpay a credit card, especially when you overpay a loan, you can't get your money back, right? So people get really confused. Even though there's ways where you could just use credit cards as backup, people get really, really confused. Okay. That's why nobody almost overpays a loan. And here's the thing: the way that I think of that monthly, let's say mortgage payment, I just think of it as a minimum payment like a credit card, right? It's almost the same thing in a way if you really think about it. But the reason why we use a line of credit is because of all the things we talked about, ultimate flexibility, and we use all of our cash flow. Now, here's a crazy thing, okay? That interest rate, the effect of it when we do it the right way is very minimal. Very minimal. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let me go ahead and put in the loan information. So this is from a previous demonstration right here. And I'm going to show you the way that you can pay off a loan, a mortgage with even an 8% interest rate line of credit. And there's what I call the right way of doing this versus the wrong way. The wrong way is replacing your loan with the 30-year mortgage with the line of credit, in my opinion, right? So let me go ahead and do this. So this is going to be 300,000, and what is the current balance right here? 275,512.41. So 275,512.41, and then the payment amount is 1,264.81. 1,264.81. And how much I think it's $7,000 of income. Let me just quickly check our income figures. Yeah, 7,000, right? So the way that we kind of set up income and expenses is that everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off is just considered to go into the expense bucket. Okay. So here, okay, is really important, right? So what we have to do is not move the entire loan into the line of credit, whereas if we do it in partial pieces, right, then it's a completely different game. Okay. So let's say that I transfer $7,000 of the loan into the line of credit at 8%, right? So you'll notice that the time payoff is 5 years and 22 grand of interest gets paid from the moment that you do it this way. Okay. Now, let me show you this, because a lot of people, because their mind is so focused on the interest rate, will tell you this is awful because this is an 8% line of credit and you're applying it to a 3% loan. So you're going to overpay, right? And I will say that the effect of the interest rate is quite, I don't want to say, 100% negligible, but it's very not that big of a deal. Okay. Because what if I said, all right, well, just do this with a 1% line of credit? Because if the interest rate is the only thing that matters, then it should make a huge difference, right? So let's do a 1% line of credit. So remember this: 5 years, 22 grand, 1% line of credit. Oh, it barely made a dent. Okay. And by the way, I don't think you will get a 1% line of credit, because I told you that the reason why the line of credit interest rate is higher is because you have complete access to your money, whereas a loan wouldn't, right? So we'll make this an 8, 5 years, 22 grand paid off. We're good. And so let me just kind of do this here. I should reset the colors. Yeah, 5 grand. I'm sorry, 5 years. So now this is 0, and then it's gonna be 45 divided by 12 plus 5, and that's going to be 8.75 years, and then we are debt free. Okay, we're debt free. Look at that, $5,000 of cash flow after 8.75 years, even though we barely had anything left over in the beginning, and we didn't make more money. Now, obviously, making more money is great, because if you made like an extra 10, 20 grand, this would probably take like 1 or 2 years, right? But assuming that everything's the same, and obviously life could go the other way around, where like you lose your job or whatever, and then it's like, dang, everything just kind of unraveled and life got even more stressful, right? But assuming that everything's constant: income, expenses, debts, how do we get out of this the easiest way, um, non-stressful, so that when we read Reddit posts like this, it's like I can't even relate to it, right? I can't relate to this, and that's kind of like how I feel You know, like I can't relate to it. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. If you made it to the end of this video, just let me know in the comment box below that I can't relate to people who are in debt, right? I can't relate to it. You know, when I see, oh, I paid it off in about what, 8.75 years, nobody will do that, especially with their mortgage, right? Okay. I can't relate to being in debt or people in debt. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.